first I want to thank everybody for rushing up here after lunch. I saw you all straggling down there and eating your food as slowly as possible. But thanks for being here today and lending us your ears. Thanks to the speakers for coming up here and lending us your wisdom today. And of course, thanks to Johnny and the whole crew for putting this together and supporting this awesome community that we have here in Chiang Mai. But I want to start out today by coming up here and proposing something that might offend most of you. But that's not my intention, and hopefully you'll get that by the end of my talk. But I want to propose that we are all, including myself, liars, cheats, thieves, and where is he? With the exception of Shane, nomads. Shane's kind of a static nomad. He gave me permission to rip on him today. So now, if you've heard me talk about personal branding before, you'll know that it isn't my intention to come up here and insult people. I just needed to do something different. I normally would come up here and say to you and try to get this huge point across, this big, shocking, mind-blowing moment across that basically goes something like this. You all, whether you think you do or not, or whether you like it or not, you all have personal brands. I know, mind-blowing. It's really not that mind-blowing. I think that most of you kind of intrinsically get that. I think that most of you understand that other people's perceptions of you make up your personal brand. So today, instead, what I want to do is I want to actually try to blow your mind. I want to try to bring something new to the table, something better. And so what I'm going to propose instead is that not only do you all have personal brands, whether you like it or not, and whether you work on them or not, but that your personal brand is absolutely one of the most important concepts in your life. And in fact, if you're not consciously aware of what your brand is and how people perceive you, and you're not purposely driving it in the direction that you want it to go to match who you think you are, that you're going to live a less happy, less fulfilled, less authentic life, and you're forever going to live as a liar, a cheat, and a thief. Now, I know this is really intense. That's big stuff, but I'm not going to pick on you anymore. I'm actually going to use myself as the primary example throughout this talk to substantiate these points that I'm trying to make. Which brings me to that point that your brand is extremely important. I like to illustrate this to you through one of my own personal stories, something that I've never shared on a stage before, certainly not in public. Some of my best friends and close relatives and friends know this, but I've never said it online or on a stage. Now, if you've known me before, you know that in the last 15 years, I've been a tech entrepreneur out of Austin, and in between startups and things, I did a lot of consulting for businesses, doing marketing, branding, consulting, design consulting, and somehow over the last 15 years, I've ended up where I am today, which is as a boutique personal brand consultant who's currently working on launching a much bigger brand consultancy. Now, what you don't know about me is how personal branding and how other people's perceptions of each other, how I became so passionate about that, how it's had such an effect on my life that drove me to do what I'm doing today. And that starts with my story. You see, I was born to an 18-year-old mother. And when I was 2 years old, I was given up to my great-grandmother, Florence. And she took care of me through my teenage years until she passed. Now, my father, he wasn't around. He was twice my mother's age when I was born, and he took off. And he ended up dying of lymphoma when he was 50, when I was just a teenager. And luckily, he was kind of famous in his profession. And so I was able to find out more about my dad by reading articles about his death than I had known in the 13 or 14 years prior combined about my father. Now, despite not knowing him and him taking off, I can't say that I really blame him. I've never been able to find any ill will or a way to blame him for this. And that's because my mom, she wasn't just young when she had me. She wasn't just half his age. She also struggled with drug addiction, and she was known in the family as a pathological liar that caused a lot of problems in the family. And I guess I think she caught kind of a case of the, for lack of a better term, I guess the crazies. I know that's not a scientific term, it's just the best way that I can explain it. Throughout my life, she's done a lot of things that are kind of crazy, and it's affected us. And I'm not up here to bash on my mom, that's not the point. I'm using her to illustrate a point about your brand. I love my mom like any boy should. I just simply don't have a relationship with my mom, and I haven't really for a long time. And this story is one of the many reasons why. Now, despite all the things that I know about my mother in my adult life, the single most groundbreaking, transformative moment in my life as it pertains to how my mother comes across to me, as it pertains to her brand in my head, the first impression that I can remember of my mother was when I was a child, and it wasn't even, she didn't even give me that first impression herself. That first impression was implanted on me by my great-grandmother, Florence. And she sat me down one night, and she had, one of these parent-child discussions. And we all know what that means. She was kind of a passive grandmother. She didn't do this very often. I actually grew up quite spoiled and got to do whatever I want, but when she did want to say something, she definitely said it. She was a strong German woman, and she made her opinions known. So occasionally, I would get the parent-child discussion. Now, we all know what these parent-child discussions are usually about. You got the birds and the bees, you got how to choose your friends wisely, you got maybe how to not succumb to peer pressure. But in my case, growing up in a very not average childhood, I didn't grow up like the rest of the kids. I had a great childhood, but it just wasn't average. In my case, my parent-child talks, my first parent-child talk was, I think it went something like this. This was the theme. She said, "Don't go to church. Religious people are crazy, and they're going to brainwash you." Right? Whoa, not your typical parent-child talk. And then my second parent-child talk, which is what we're talking about right now, was, I guess I'll label it, your mom is bonkers. So, and you definitely don't get that one because usually you're raised by your parents, and you're not gonna sit down with your parents and hear them talk about how bonkers they are. So, anyways, she sat me down at the kitchen table, and it was nighttime, and I saw out the window. It was pitch dark. It was evening, maybe 8 o'clock where I was from, and I was young. I don't remember how old, maybe 10 or 11. And she said, "Taylor, we need to talk. I want you to understand something." She said, "Look at your mom and look at your sisters." She said, my sisters were living with my mom at the time. She said, "Your sisters don't have the same upbringing that you do. They're not as fortunate as you. You're very fortunate to have grown up with me. You're very fortunate to not have grown up in your mom's household. I raised your mom, and I know her very well. She's an addict, and she's a liar, and she will do anything to support her addiction. And your sisters have struggled in and out of foster homes and have to deal with this life that is totally foreign to you. And I just want you to understand that you're very fortunate." And I did. I did understand that at that point. I was following what she was saying. And she ended this talk by saying, "Listen, if you don't want to end up like your mother, then you won't do the things that your mother does." And, I'm 10, 11 something. You're like, whoa, all right, that's deep for your average young boy. She ended this talk by saying, "Don't do drugs, don't smoke cigarettes, and don't hang out with bad people." And again, really deep for such a young boy, an average young boy. But I didn't grow up average. I had a really good childhood, and I knew what she was saying, and I agreed with her. At that point, I did see the contrast between myself and my sisters, and I saw that they weren't as fortunate as me. And so I looked at the situation, and I said, yeah, she's right, absolutely. It clicked with me. And so I responded to her how most young boys in this traumatic situation would respond, and I looked at her and I said something like, "Okay, can I go play now?" Standard, right? But you know what's funny is that it really did stick. In the 23 or 24 years, or however long it's been since that talk, there hasn't been a month that's passed that I haven't thought about those words. And it's actually become a very strong part of myself and my brand, that many of the people that know me or know of me and perceive me in a certain way would associate those things with me. I don't do drugs. I'm very against hard drugs, especially. I have never smoked a cigarette in my life and won't. And I usually excommunicate bad people out of my life as quickly as possible, as soon as I recognize that they're bad. So, your brand precedes you. My mom didn't plant that impression on me. My grandmother did. Just like your family and your friends and your loved ones are planting impressions in the people that they know about you. And that's really important to grasp. Nowadays, we don't really get a chance like we used to set a first impression. And we do sometimes, but this is all, because Facebook, right? Because Facebook and because of your relationships and that people talk. And what ends up happening is that people plant the first impression on somebody else about you, and then the decisions that they make about you and the type of life that you live around these people changes based on their perception of you. And so it's extremely important. Now, this brings me to the next point, which is the first point of my slide talk, my talk title, which is liar. Now, I mentioned earlier that I was raised by my grandmother, and I was your typical grandma's boy, like bad. I was spoiled rotten. She gave me everything that I wanted. She let me do what I wanted. I'd go where I wanted, hang out with who I wanted. And I never really had a whole lot of worry about repercussions or consequences. Well, okay, she did sometimes, usually in the hallway where I grew up. That's where stuff would go down. If she got mad at me, I'd usually end up running down the hallway and having like a shoe thrown at my head. And that was her favorite thing to do. But there was this one time she chased me down the hallway with a frying pan in her hand, swinging it at the back of my head. This little old irate lady chasing me with a frying pan. But other than those circumstances, I really didn't have to worry about it a whole lot. So I grew up really spoiled, and what that means in the context of this talk is that brand that my grandmother endowed on me from a very young age by giving me the things that I wanted and succumbing to all of my desires and letting me do what I wanted had some positive effects on me, but that's not what I'm here to talk about. It followed me through my life, and it was perpetuated by me. Once I started getting a taste of that, obviously you become spoiled and you want these things. You get used to having things handed to you. You get used to having things just given to you when you're in trouble or when you're not. And so this spoiled brat brand theme that got plastered on me from a young age and then that I perpetuated into my adulthood stuck with me. And of course, when I started to get older and learn about these things, I hated it. I didn't want that brand theme. I didn't want to be a spoiled brat. That's a really negative term. And I thought to myself, I'm not a spoiled brat. That's not who I am inside. I'm not that guy. You can call me that all you want, but it's not me. And I did what most people do, and I said, you know what? I am who I am. I'm going to be who I'm going to be, and if you have a different opinion, buzz off. You can think what you want about me. And unfortunately, that's wrong. You can't think like that. That's not what matters. We don't exist in a vacuum. What we think about ourselves, who we think we are, that's not necessarily who we really are, because we're social creatures. We exist out here in the world with everybody else. And so who we really are is who we think we are, combined with who other people think we are. We live in that gray area, the difference, the contrast. And obviously the goal that we're trying to achieve, what we're trying to do, hopefully, if you're conscious about it, you know what's going on, is to bridge the gap between the two. You want to find out where the differences are, where are the discrepancies between what I think about myself and by what you think of me. And then bridge that gap so I bring them close together. They'll never be the same, but you can bring them closer together if you're aware. And so, you're a liar if you're lying to yourself, and we all lie to ourselves about who we are. We all do it. It might not be in one brand theme, but it's definitely in some brand themes. You're definitely lying to yourself about something. Now, I'm going to give you a way to stop it. I'm going to give you a way to stop being a liar to yourself forever. You don't ever have to be a liar again. And it's quite simple, but it's very difficult. It's simple to understand, it's very difficult to execute, and I doubt that most of you in this room, and I'm not trying to be a pessimist, but I doubt that most of you in this room are going to get past step 2. There's only 2 steps. The first step is to build a brand profile of yourself and understand who you are from all perspectives, because that's the information that you control, right? You think you know who you are, so build a brand profile and talk about who you are. What makes you tick? What are your brand themes? Who are you as a professional? Who are you as an employee? Who are you as a boss? Who are you as a family man? Talk about these themes and write down what makes you tick. Who do you think you are? And then write down how you think other people perceive you in those same areas. Now, a lot of you will probably make a lot of similarities. You'll probably think, well, I think I'm that, and I actually think that most people think I'm that too. Once you have this brand profile and you see the contrast, you see the differences, then the next step, which is the most critical step, is to find out the truth. And this is the step I don't think you're going to make it past. How many people in this room think it would be difficult to go out to your network, whether you are close to them or not, people that know of you, that have spent time in your life, whether you like them or don't, and ask them for real talk feedback about who you are? How many of you think that that would be difficult? I hope every single hand goes up, because if you're not raising your hand, you're a liar. It would be extremely difficult to do that. There are people in your life who you absolutely do not want to go up to and ask these questions. And your job is to go up to these people, ask these questions, and find out in all these different areas of your life, profession, family, all the things that are important to you, ask the people that are in these groups what they really think of you and see how it contrasts to what you think they thought of you. And then once you have the truth, you can build a bridge between the two, and you can start to purposely drive your brand forward. Now, that brings me to cheat, and cheat happens automatically, and the reason that cheat happens is because you're lying to yourself. You're not doing it on purpose, you're doing it because you don't know any better. You see, once you have the information and you know the truth, and you've built the bridge and you understand where you're weak and where you're strong on all the things that you care about in your brand, then you can devise a strategy and consciously make those things happen by not breaking the rules, by doing the things that cause your brand to move forward in all the areas and not doing the things that make you go backwards. We cheat because we don't know the rules. You can't play by the rules, unless you're lucky, if you don't know them. So, I cheat. I've still been struggling with getting over it. 5-6 years ago, I think, is when the big breakthrough happened for me. I cheat because of my spoiled brat brand that I had my whole life. It followed me into my 20s until I finally realized that I was lying to myself, and I realized all the ways that I was cheating. I was cheating by being a beggar and a borrower in this theme of my life. I was cheating in other ways too, but in this theme of my life, I was being a beggar and a borrower. Anytime I'd run into trouble, I'd divert back to my old self, and I would ask for help. I would borrow money. I would do things that kept perpetuating the spoiled brat brand, and I didn't even know I was doing it because I was being ignorant and lying to myself that wasn't me. So I was cheating. And it kept me spoiled. It kept me spoiled rotten until I figured it out, and I stopped borrowing money, and I started just working for everything that I did so that I could prove to everybody that I wasn't a spoiled brat. So cheating kind of takes care of itself. Now, the best way to stop cheating is once you have a picture and a strategy of where you want to go in all these different brand themes in your life, then the actions that you take on a daily basis will hopefully propel you towards that. But what I'm going to propose to you today, I'm not going to talk about the small things. You should already do those. As soon as you get your strategy plan, make sure you do the small things. Everything that you do, all your posts on Facebook, all the conversations that you have with friends, all the social situations you're in, make sure that they align with your brand themes. But those are the small things. What I'm going to challenge you to do today is to play big. Find the big things that you can do to fix your brand in the areas that it needs to be fixed and to propel you forward in all of your brand areas in general. Now, one of those things, if you were trying to become an authority and you didn't have much authority in a certain topic, this is a good example because we're doing it right now, you might want to get up on a stage and speak to people. The bigger the room, the better. You're going to gain a lot of brand equity that way. You're going to be seen as an authority to a lot of people. and hopefully it spreads and goes viral. In today's day and age, that could be a huge step forward for your brand equity. It could be a huge step forward on these brand themes. That's one example. If you're weak in the family area, okay, well then you need to start doing the big things for your family, for your children, for your mom and dad, that will strengthen you in the biggest way possible in the areas that you're weak. Those are the big jumps that make a huge difference down the line. You combine those with the small jumps and you got it whacked. That brings me to the last thing, which is actually quite short. I'm running short on time here, but I'm almost done. The thief is the easy one to understand, and it's also the easy one to fix because it just happens automatically. It's a steal. The thief happens because if you're lying to yourself and you're cheating on your brand, you're ultimately robbing people of the authentic you. Because remember, you aren't who you think you are. You're a combination of who you think you are and what other people think you are. And so by giving them something that's not right, by cheating unknowingly and driving some false brand image that you don't think you are forward, they see that and they perceive you that way, and you're robbing them of your authentic self. You're robbing them of the truth, of who you are inside. So the closer that you can bring those points together and fix this issue, the more authentic you're being, and the less you're robbing people of your potential, of your love, of your relationships. You don't have to rob them anymore of this stuff. Now, the action plan for this I've already given you. It's simple. It takes care of itself. There really isn't anything you can do to stop being a thief other than work on not lying and cheating. The thief will take care of itself. So, nomads, Shane included this time, I want you to go home after this talk today and remember to take control of your brand. Build your brand profile. Figure out the hard questions. Figure out the information that you don't know. Figure out where you're blind. Go out to your networks and get a really good understanding of who you are. Don't let somebody else, who's probably already planted your first impression for you, win. You win. Give people your love and your relationships. Give people your authentic self and let them see you for who you are instead of accidentally leading them down the wrong path and giving them the wrong idea. It's really important, and you'll see huge, huge leaps in your life, in your success, your happiness, your fulfillment, if you do this. So nomads, go and take control of your brand today. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Taylor West. Oh, nice.